Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very accomplished educator, a thinker from Essex, UK, Professor Atul Shah. Atul, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Pleasure to be here. And it's very nice of you to share wisdom from all over the world, in this way.
Thank you. Professor Shah is a director, he's a thought leader, he's a writer, educator, and broadcaster. He's an award-winning researcher. He has a wide global leadership relationship network, and he's an author. And all of you know from so many of my conversations, I'm very partial to authors. So, Atul, let's start by asking you, in brief, tell me about your own journey that has brought you to this place today.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Like you, I come from the Indian tradition. I was born in East Africa in 1961, just on the cusp of Kenya's independence. And I was raised in the Jain tradition. Many of your Indian listeners would know that. And I see myself as being extremely fortunate to have been raised in that tradition. My father was a major community leader throughout his lifetime and very pioneering and visionary community leader. And in a sense, now looking back on life, Ashutosh, I was absolutely fortunate to have been born between East and West. Kenya is close to the equator. And in a sense, if you look at my work, it is actually a bridge between the East and the West.
Fantastic.
And presently, I'm a chartered accountant by qualification. Business and finance is in the DNA of Jains. Many of your listeners would know that, especially if they are from India.
Yeah.
And I feel that what is desperately needed in the world today, given the inequality crisis, is the kind of timeless wisdom and values of the Dharmic tradition. I mean, Ashutosh, your own example of you giving back to society through these podcasts is so natural for Indians. This idea that we're not going to take anything with us when we go. I'm one of few finance professors who conduct funerals, Ashutosh. And it's an experience to understand that the only thing that we'll leave behind is how we have touched other lives.
Absolutely.
And sadly, with finance, all over the world, the education system has become very technical. Very simple words like trust, relationships, patience never appear in any accounting and finance textbook, both in university and in the professions. Well, in the professions it's appearing now because of ethics and ethical crises.
Correct.
But really, there is very little discussion about what trust actually means, what patience actually means in finance, what compassion means in finance. And really, when the professions cover it, they talk about it in a very technical way, almost like a set of rules, rather than connecting it with our own cultural experiences, wherever we live, whatever beliefs we have, whatever neighborhood we occupy. It's very important that ethics is taught in the context in which we live, and among the role models and the experiences we have had, good and bad. Otherwise, if it is taught in a technical way, recently, partners at KPMG in New York were caught cheating in their ethics exams and charged, fined hundreds of millions of dollars. Same thing with PwC in Canada. And, it almost feels, so that's what people think. Ethics is an exam that you just need to pass, but you don't need to practice.
Absolutely. In fact, you need to Practice it more than you need to pass it. So you're absolutely right. Atul, you've also written a lot on finance and diversity. And let me start by asking you some questions on diversity. You took a 1,500-mile masala tour of Britain to showcase the depth and breadth of the diversity in Britain and help the country improve its cultural intelligence. Tell me a little bit about this 1,500-mile trip and what were some of your key learnings?
Yeah, thank you, Ashutosh. The dharmic tradition is one of the oldest living cultures of the world,
Correct.
and also one of the least understood cultures of the world.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, explain through media. The whole 1,500-mile tour was covered widely on the BBC. I wanted to explain through media the ordinary stories of people who live by these culture and values and how they are transforming, whether it is their workplace, their neighborhood, their community, in very colorful and diverse ways. I mean, you think of, major Indian software exports. I call them software exports, like yoga.
Yeah.
Right. Yoga is one of the greatest Indian software exports, but
Correct.
very few people in the West, especially, connect yoga with culture and ethics and
Correct.
wisdom.
Absolutely.
So, similarly with food, I mean, I wanted to share how diverse the Indian food tradition is, and that if we can break bread with anybody, that is the start of relationship and respect, and how food is such a basic part of Indian hospitality, and yeah, and sharing, Ashutosh, I'm so sort of concerned that a word like sharing is also not there in finance. Instead, we have a word called greed and profit maximization and wealth maximization taught as a science of success, that to succeed, you have to be greedy. You have to be focused on increasing profits and increasing value. Where is the patience? Where is the humility? Where is the need to understand that actually, how much we don't all need to be millionaires to be happy, and if everyone became a millionaire, this planet would be destroyed long time ago. Already we are on the path to destruction anyway. So contentment is key. Patience helps us to sustain. Your new book about sustainable capitalism, right? Uh, and the Indian wisdom on millennium goals, which are so important, I think is very, very important, because we have taught about this and written about this in our scriptures a long thousands of years ago. And the most beautiful part of it, Ashutosh, this science was not developed when the human being was under threat or in danger, right? So it is actually a much more authentic science than the current day sustainability consultants you and I meet all the time. They are almost changing their spots. How can the human being who has been at the center of the Anthropocene, and the destruction of the planet, suddenly change his spots and say, no, 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 now I'm going to help you to be sustainable, and I'm going to be the best,
Yes.
answer to the world's problems. No, at the least, we need to be humble. And also, it is so important, Ashutosh, that we go back to those traditions and wisdoms which have survived the test of time,
Right.
because therein lies the authenticity,
Correct.
therein lies the integrity. And I hope, and we talked about this earlier, that India also comes to awaken to its own inner strength,
Correct.
to its own spirit and culture and wisdom that it has inherited over thousands of years.
Absolutely. Well said. And when you were on your tour, you must have come across many, many different cultures, many different people. You work with a lot of corporates as well. I wanted to ask you that the whole world is talking of inclusion now. And yet there are many pockets of racism, many pockets of diversity, exclusion, and so on. How much is actually being achieved in the world?
Well, I would say quite little, because a lot of we are living in a very big social media and technology world. And what technology does, unfortunately, is it gives us the impression that we don't need to meet somebody to know them. And that is the start of a lot of ignorance, a lot of discrimination, a lot of very quick and flippant thinking. We need to really, in a way, socialize at a very human level. But more importantly, and this is the profound point of the dharmic sciences of India, that respect begins with respect for all living beings. So diversity and inclusion begin with biodiversity.
Correct.
And if we are able to respect animals, if we are able to respect nature, if we are able to live simply and avoid waste, and to live, and to have an ethical diet, we are really on the step to inclusion in a genuine way. And it's very likely that if we change our habits, we will also become much more patient and respectful of others, and tolerant of others.
Very interesting. And a follow-up question to you, Atul, is how does culture impact diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Well, I mean, culture is central to diversity, because have to be able to embrace people from different backgrounds, we have to respect their beliefs and their traditions, and more importantly, we have to respect them as human beings, as fellow human beings. As an accountant, Ashutosh, you look at the profit and loss account, and the only time the human appears is as wages, as a cost.
Absolutely.
So in that account, there is no soul, there is no diversity, and there is just this one number. Now, if every finance leader, decides to treat his or her workers as cost, as literally almost products on a production line, or machines, if you like, we are never going to be inclusive or diverse.
Well said.
And the other side of diversity, Ashutosh, is that talent comes in many colors, in genders and abilities. One of India's most famous Bollywood singers, Mohammed Rafi, was dyslexic.
Correct.
Yeah. And he was very good at sound, rhythm, memorizing, and that came because of his disability. Right?
Amazing.
And there's so many stories like that. So yeah, it's diversity is such an opportunity to enrich our own lives, to learn from difference. I think one of the problems that we have is, if we are in a monoculture or meet with the same kinds of people all the time, we're not going to change, we're not going to learn and adapt, and grow. And in that sense, I must say I'm very fortunate. The United Kingdom is a hub of the world.
Absolutely, yes.
And you go to even a small town in the United Kingdom, and there will be people from at least 100 countries living there. Very few countries in the world
are as diverse.
Can boast that strength. So see it as an opportunity. That was what my Masala tour was about, to show the diversity of Britain to its own self. Because all we hear in the media is the negative aspects. The terrorism, or the violence, or the racism, or the discrimination. But what about the positive aspects of people building bridges?
Very well said. So now let me move to the other part of your expertise, which is in finance. Tell me a little bit about the kind of work you are doing, and some of the research that you are doing in the world of finance.
Yeah, so Ashutosh, thank you for that question. As I explained, I'm really concerned that finance, education, and knowledge has become much, much more complex, technical, inaccessible,
Mm,
opaque,
mm.
and distant for ordinary people.
Wow, that's a
So
lot of
lots of
interesting
ordinary
adjectives.
people
Yeah.
are actually bullied by finance,
Mm,
bullied, exploited, and abused by finance,
mm,
and I can, give you lots and lots of practical examples of that.
mm,
So
mm,
that is one part of it. Secondly, the experts in finance,
mm,
like accountants, like
mm,
lawyers, like
mm,
bankers,
mm,
are supposed to operate in a way that they protect the public interest and the client's interest.
mm,
But
mm,
the reality is that they do exactly the opposite. They
mm,
use their knowledge and expertise to exploit their clients
mhm,
and to exploit the weak and the vulnerable people. I
mm,
mean, just take a simple example like interest rates, right? Uh, you know, our bank interest rates in the UK, if you have a savings account, have been 0%
mm.
for a long time, virtually.
Yeah.
And yet, when if you go to a bank for a loan,
Mm,
they will start at 4-5% at the least,
correct.
especially as a customer, as a retailer, minimum. Credit cards are charging in 25%
Mm,
annual interest, for
mm,
borrowing. So where is that money in the middle going,
mm,
So you get the whole systems and structures and institutions,
mm,
and we're supposed to live in a competitive world.
mm,
So where is the competition if everyone is charging at least 25% on the
mm,
credit card? Where
mm.
is the competition?
Correct.
So that's just a simple example.
Yeah.
Pensions, the moment you get into more complex product like pensions and life insurance and all that,
Mm,
the exploitation level actually increases.
mm,
So, as a public spirited person, I am, and as an educator, I'm extremely concerned about this.
mm.
I try to educate my students to be ethical experts,
Yeah. Mm,
and actually I share stories and examples
mm,
of how people who accountants who operate
mm,
with trust, with care, and relationships are never out of work
mm.
because the clients keep on referring them to others.
Yeah.
Their work keeps on increasing. And very often, Ashutosh, I have met, some of these ethical accountants
Mm.
who actually look after their clients' money better than their own, right?
True.
And they are the ones who really succeed in a long-term sense. And they are contented people.
Correct.
They
Correct.
also provide lots of voluntary and community service.
Mm.
And so, those are the examples I try to highlight
Fascinating.
and try to promote uh,
Fascinating.
and say that such people do exist. But at the same time, Ashutosh, I use my research and expertise to point out
Mm,
the structural frauds that are
mm,
going on.
mm,
And these structural frauds are very often invisible,
mm,
and they are set up in the institutions, the stock market,
mm,
the large banking practices and cultures of places like Goldman Sachs.
mm,
And I also point out some of the opposite side where people with positions of power
mm.
act very differently, and they are
Right.
the good examples, but
Right.
very often they don't. And
Mm.
that is very
Well said.
unfair
Well
and
said.
unsustainable
I
as well.
agree with you. So let me now move to your book. And I see your book just behind you. Tell me about your book and what was your hypothesis?
So essentially, actually, this brings the two topics we've been talking
Yeah.
together:
Mm,
culture, and finance.
mm,
If we look at something very simple like money, and
mm,
wherever in the world people live, right,
mm,
they will use currency. If you take out your note from your pocket
mm.
and read it, all it is a promise by the central
Absolutely.
bank to
Mm,
pay you 10 rupees or 10 pounds or
correct.
$10.
Correct.
It's a promise.
Mm,
It's actually a statement of trust, confidence, and relationship even. That,
mm,
believe me,
mm,
that if I give you this 10 rupees, it will be worth 10 rupees. Somebody will honor it, right?
mm, Yep.
So if we go back to that, and we as a humanity, birds survive without any money. They live and die without any money, right? We humans have created this thing called money. We have created it for a purpose, and that purpose is to help us negotiate everyday life,
Correct.
to help us exchange goods and services, and to help us share what we have with others, right?
Right.
But unfortunately, we have today become servants of money rather than masters of money, you know, as a people and as a society. I mean, right now, as we speak, there are predictions of a global financial crash.
Yeah.
Britain has got one of the world's largest financial centers, and it's as if we are being flooded by a storm of money, interest rates, you know, almost as if, and most people who speak about it, they don't really know what's going on. They pretend to be experts, but you know, they can't even count the extent of losses or gains, and they're just giving predictions and forecasts. And even the government, the politicians, the prime minister is actually speculating with her economic policies, you know, that hoping that growth will come by actually reducing taxes. I mean, so much of research has proved the opposite.
Absolutely.
But no, and so, you know, there is a lot of corruption amongst policymakers and senior bankers. And then we know from our experience, like the 2008 global crash, the bankers' bonuses were not cut. The banks grew. They actually expanded. You know, they doubled in size. They acquired other banks after the crash, even though they were the biggest culprits. And guess who paid for it? Ordinary people, through higher taxes, through lower interest rates. We are continuing to pay for the 2008 crash. So you can imagine if this crash happens, how depressed the world will become. So we need to take back control of money.
Well said. Well said. And now we're coming to the end of our conversation. I have time for one more question. And now I'm going to ask you to wear your hat as an educator. And based on your vast experience in diversity, as a thought leader, as a writer, as an educator, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from your own journey and from our conversation?
I would just say meditate and reflect about money and what it means to you as a person, and how you can, if possible, not allow yourself to become overwhelmed by money and materialism. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is experience the joy of sharing and caring. And the learning that you can have from people who are different from you, whether it's male, female, different colors, belief systems, races, etc. And the third point, and that relates to the planet and sustainability, think long term. You know, try to be more patient, try to think long term, and try to you know, improve your life habits such that you're simple living but high thinking, you know. And if we can change our habits, the chances are that people will want to hire us, people will want to work with us, because we are self-disciplined. We enable others to trust us, you know, because we care about how we deal with our customers and suppliers.
Fascinating, fascinating. And on that note, and your 3 wonderful lessons, meditate and reflect about money and what it means to you. It's a very, very intense and deep statement you have made. Second one, experience the joy of sharing and caring. And the third one is think of the planet, think long term, and be more patient. Thank you, Atul, for your incredible conversation with me on the subject of diversity, on the subject of finance. Thank you for talking to me about your 1,500-mile masala tour of Britain. Thank you also for talking to me about your book. And I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go to Amazon.com and check out Professor Atul K. Shah's book as well. I will go and check it out myself. Finally, thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Yeah, I have 5 books in total, so you can choose and pick. But yeah, very nice to speak to you, Ashutosh, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.